cops put on leave and nearly $700,000 of your taxpayer dollars doled out. For 3 years, no one has said a word about why. Not the police chief or the federal government until now.
This is a pretty serious thing for you to stick your neck out about.
Unless I was pretty confident in what I'm saying, yeah, this is not a joke.
The head of the police union is speaking only to Wink News investigative reporter Lauren Sweeney.
She's live in the studio now with this Wink News exclusive.
Yeah, Union President Matt Sellers says the federal government is investigating the officers as part of a federal drug trafficking and murder conspiracy case. He wants it all out in the open because he says there's no way they are involved, and it's time to clear their names once and for all.
There's a culture here in the Dunbar community that has many people scared to death to talk.
When Christopher Smith was murdered in 2013, word hit the streets. Smith was killed because he was a police informant. And he was a federal informant, from your understanding.
Yes.
Police Union President Matt Sellers was the lead homicide detective assigned to investigate Smith's murder.
The FBI adopted the case to work alongside with me. It was their informant that was killed.
At the end of 2018, the feds charged this man, Robert Ward, for ordering the hit on Smith's life. The indictment says he ran a drug ring from Panama City to Fort Myers. And Sellers says now the feds are investigating 4 Fort Myers police officers in connection to that case. Do you think the federal government thinks that these officers blew his cover and got him murdered?
I don't know what the federal government thinks. All I know is what I've read, the bits and pieces from a highly redacted report, which says officers leaked information. Not during the 3 years while I investigated it did officers leak information, or was there any evidence of that? None. Zero.
This is the highly redacted report he's referring to. It's from a 2017 audit into the Fort Myers Police Department, and it was the catalyst to the chief calling on the federal government to investigate officer misconduct. A day before the audit came out, Chief Derek Diggs put 4 officers on leave: Captain Melvin Perry, Sergeant Michael Forbes, Officer Jason Jackson, and Sergeant Rick Notero. And Sellers says he can connect the dots between the words left visible on the report, like summer of 2012 and subsequently murdered, to the murder of Christopher Smith.
There was only one informant killed that year, and that was a case that I worked.
For 3 years since the officers were put on leave, no one at the police department, the city, or federal government will comment on why the 4 officers are being investigated. How confident are you that this is what this whole 3-year cloud of secrecy is about?
I'm very confident. First of all, I'm confident in what I'm saying. I just don't stick my head out and recklessly say things that are wrong.
Sellers says he's just as confident that the officers have nothing to do with the murder of Christopher Smith. Is it possible that there's some other connection that the federal government has?
I don't know what the federal government has. All I'm saying is these officers, there were no officers suspected in this.
I've spoken to the most of the officers' attorneys. They all say they don't know what is being investigated and say the officers didn't do anything wrong. You can see their full statements on the Wink News app.
Lauren, what about that redacted report? Is there any chance we'll ever see any of that?
Well, the police union sure hopes so. They're suing the city of Fort Myers to get them to release that full report. And the city maintains it's part of an active criminal investigation, so it's exempt from public records. So far, the city hasn't actually responded to that lawsuit, and still no comment on any of this from the police department or the U.S. Attorney's Office.
And you're going to have more for us on this tonight at 11?
Yes, there's a lot more here. There are actually some internal affairs audio recordings that I listened to. It has connected to other parts of that redacted report, and I'll have part of that story tonight at 11.
All right, thank you. Fort Myers taxpayers have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to pay a police officer who hasn't been on the job for 4 years.
Chief Derek Diggs suspended Officer Jason Jackson with pay back in 2017 amid a very secretive misconduct investigation and has refused to comment on it ever since. But in February, Wink News investigative reporter Lauren Sweeney broke the story that Jackson and 3 others are actually part of a federal drug, murder, and public corruption case. And tonight she joins us with more insight. Lauren.
Chris, Officer Jason Jackson's father told me enough is enough. He wants to restore his son's good name, and he believes the only reason his son is under investigation is because of rumors spread around the department. In fact, a detective was reprimanded in 2018 for things that she was saying about Jackson and two of the other officers that are part of this years-long misconduct mystery.
What you brought me for, Jason?
This police body camera footage from February 2017 was actually one of Officer Jason Jackson's last days on the job at the Fort Myers Police Department.
It's not that, I'm trying to be nasty. It's just if I could, I would give it to you in a heartbeat.
Jason, he was like the cooler. If there was a problem in certain areas, they called Jason. He talked to people.
But Jackson's father, Henry, says his son's connection to the community was held against him.
It's terrible, terrible. You've been accused of doing something what you know you haven't done anything.
There was a whole basis of what was reported to me and why somebody felt that they were uneasy with Jason.
That's Detective Emily DeStephanis during an internal affairs investigation in 2017. She was heard telling coworkers that she'd seen Jackson riding around in a truck with someone she believed to be a drug dealer.
Well, what did she say specifically?
That he's hanging around with some of these guys outside of work.
But those coworkers, who are both black, told Internal Affairs they didn't like the implication.
Jason does football for the football league here locally for Dunbar. Even with some of those guys that are bad guys, even though they're out there doing the things that they're doing, they do take the heartbreaking with these little kids. So it could be that his kid is even on the team that Jackson may be affiliated with.
Jackson's father believes this misunderstanding of the Dunbar community led to the investigation into his son.
Somebody outside looking in, which wasn't raised in this Dunbar community, don't know what's going on.
But a year into his suspension, Henry Jackson says his son got a letter from the U.S. Attorney's Office in Tampa. It stated he's a target of a criminal investigation involving drugs, murder, and public corruption. He goes to Tampa, and they never call him in.
So I don't know what exactly happened on that particular date, but he came back home.
I've confirmed the 3 other officers placed on leave at the same time as Jackson are also targets in that federal investigation, but none have been indicted for any crimes.
Jason, he didn't do any drugs. He didn't kill anyone. So why we go through all this 4 years now almost? You paying a person for staying at home.
Henry Jackson feels the suspensions and investigation are all based on rumors.
I'm going to rejoice today that's showing that that they didn't have anything. They're going to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I messed up 4 years of your life." No, sorry doesn't cut it.
Chief Derek Diggs has declined dozens of my requests for interviews on this topic. The department did tell me by email it still has no information to provide, and the U.S. Attorney's Office won't even confirm the federal investigation of the officers. To date, taxpayers have paid out around $220,000 to Officer Jackson while he's not on the job.
And Lauren, what about the other officers that were suspended at the same time as Jackson?
They've all retired. Some even took early retirement, and I'm told that none of them are actually able to find jobs while this hangs over them.